All right, troops. Happy New Year, everyone. Welcome to That Mental Ginger Show with your host, Andrew Durning, aka The Mental Ginger. Well, my faithful followers, you made it through a year with me. Congratulations. And what a way to celebrate. I have got another YouTube exclusive. Raise the roof. We have an esteemed author and professional coach, Coach Kellan. And how do you say your last name so I don't mess this up?
Fluckiger.
Fluckiger. I've always in a little bit of a rut where the surname's kind of been going up and down, and I always like to make sure that if there's one I really don't want to mess up, I get the guest to say it first.
But I totally get it. I've been pronouncing it and spelling it my whole life, and it's very complicated.
I know the feeling. Like, I've always thought my name was Andrew. How do you spell that? Durning. Well, Coach, it is an absolute pleasure to have you on. I'm really excited that you could be our first YouTube exclusive of the new year.
Well, thanks for having me. Appreciate being here. I'm hoping to provide some fun, some value, and some thoughts for your audience.
Well, it seems to be going that way with the guests. And what I like to do to get us kick-started is to get our guests to tell my audience about their origin story. Because if there's one thing we all have in common, is that we all have an origins. So, Coach, in your own time, please tell us your origin story.
You know, I was born in San Francisco, California, in the U.S., and two-parent home. Nothing would have been particularly remarkable from the outside. My mom, especially, was very fanatic about behavior and religion, and so her view, she was, young and didn't really know how to be a mother, but she viewed her job as to force us to behave a particular way, and her view of discipline today would be felony child abuse. And some people think I say that as a joke. I mean it. I remember even in high school getting dressed last in the locker room because I didn't want the kids to see that I was black and blue. So there's a lot of physical discipline, and it all tied to being good enough. You're okay, you're not okay. And I remember hiding in my room wondering why I got beat every day, that sort of thing. And this isn't a diatribe about my mom. She eventually grew up, and the last kids that were born, she had 6 kids, a group of 3 and then another group of 3. The last 3, when I wrote my book, Tightrope of Depression, my journey from darkness, despair, and death to light, love, and life, and described the upbringing, not in an accusatory way, but just a story. The younger 3 kids didn't believe any of it happened because by then my mom had grown up and she'd figured out how not to do some things. Anyway, the main thing that left me with is the certainty that I was not good enough, and I never would be. Everything that was going wrong around me was my fault. Now, I understand that much of your audience is in the arts, and I was blessed to be in a musical family with musical talent, and I wanted to be a musician. Keyboard player, pianist, and
that was man after my own heart. I was a bit of the keyboard player in high school. That's mainly keyboard because I didn't have big enough fingers to actually play a piano properly. So kudos to you.
Well, yeah, I started learning piano when I was a kid, like 5 or something. In fact, I don't remember not being able to read music. That's how young I was when I learned. But anyway, that was not okay to be a musician because I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area at the time when rock and roll was just coming into being, and all musicians were pigs, drug addicts and lushes and all that sort of thing in my mom's view. So while we did a lot of music, it was, as long as it was church and community stuff, that's okay. But real stuff professionally, that's not okay. So I was not allowed to do that, even though I was quite good. And eventually that dichotomy caused me to close the recording studio I had opened and pursue a career, a go get a real job kind of career, which was I was really good at. So and this is going to sound really strange, I started experimenting with drugs when I was 13. not because of peer pressure, but to get to it as an escape from the life that I had.
What
I
specific
never,
drugs did you experiment with? Was that just around the time of like where weed was kind of king, or was there any kind of psychedelics that went with it?
well, eventually all of it. But what
Uh,
it started with was inhalants, sniffing gasoline and that sort of stuff.
wow.
Just to, because it was handy and it was easy to get, and I didn't have to go anywhere or do anything.
Just need to sit at a petrol station for a couple hours.
Yeah, yeah. I just needed to be somewhere else, somehow else.
Mm-hmm.
The bottom line was I adopted a truthful sort of base layer understanding that I was fundamentally flawed. And you would think, I left home when I was 17 and I never returned. You would think that when you get out of that, you'd somehow get over it.
Mm.
I didn't. I believed to the core of my soul that somehow my mom was right and I sucked. And so for my entire adult life until I was 52, so for 40 years, I never talked to a soul about how I felt.
Wow.
I believed that all the problems I had in my own life were my fault and that I really was the root of all evil. The result of that was I was married and divorced 3 times. I created real career success pursuing that job thing and then would burn it down. I had very high profile positions, like I testified before Congress in the US and all kinds of stuff, C-suite stuff, made a lot of money. So on the one hand, it looked like, wow, in the front end, and behind the scenes, it was like, holy crap. I was that guy.
What about your father? Where was he during all this?
He was there. My mom was the dominant one, and he worked 2 jobs sometimes and wasn't, he was there some on weekends and things, but I didn't have anywhere near the interaction with him as I did. And eventually my mom, I really resented the way my mom treated my dad, because in her effort to have everybody be the right thing, I felt like she was cruel and abusive to him. Like she didn't hit him, like she beat the crap out of us, but she was emotionally unkind, correcting him all the time and just really pushy. And I, but I didn't see all that till I was an adult later. And I saw that, and I'd go visit mom and dad, and the way she talked to him and stuff, it used to really bother me. So during all those years, 40 years, from 13 to 53, I was in and out of rehab. I was a high functioning drug addict, all kinds of everything you mentioned and more. My favorite ended up being cocaine. At one point, I was a $3,000 a week cocaine addict, and I was making so much money that didn't matter.
Wow. It was like Wolf of Wall Street kind of stuff, but just letting the money coming in and then just going straight up your nose kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry for the bluntness of how I said it, but just that's me. I'm about as subtle as a brick to the face sometimes with my questions.
No, it doesn't bother me a bit. It was true. Somehow I was able to be a really high functioning addict. So I had really high profile positions and all that stuff. But behind the scenes, like I said, I was married and divorced 3 times, total disaster in relationships. I didn't know, I wasn't intentionally a jerk, but I didn't know how to love anybody. I grew up with everything being conditional. And what I finally realized, I remember during the years saying to myself, I don't know how to feel anything. I can be anybody you want. I can show up and be like a method actor. I can take an alias or a legend and be that person. But when the lights go out and I don't know who I am, I don't feel anything. Wow. And I remember living that experience for many years.
I'm really sorry that you had to go through that, especially it was something I discussed with a couple of guests beforehand, but you always hear about it being the dad. You always hear my dad was abusive or my dad walked out on us. You never hear about it from the other side. You never hear the switch about it being the mum. And that's something that I think it's definitely not uncommon, but it just isn't spoke about enough. And props to you for being able to say it.
Well, I don't think, I don't think, I don't know. I mean, I've long since forgiven. I don't hold any grudges or negativity. She's on her own journey. My father's since passed away, and he's been gone 20 years. So my mom's now been a widow. She's just about 90. And I don't think she'll be around another year or two.
Mm.
I don't have a hateful or negative relationship with her, and she doesn't really know what she did. Like I raised it with her later, and she doesn't connect with, like, she's changed, and then it's not part of her memory anymore. So that I don't seek any reconciliation. Reconciliation I have. I don't seek any acknowledgement or anything there, and it's okay. I finally realized I wouldn't have that, and the key to change, because that pattern of success, self-sabotage, getting married, having more kids, being a disaster, being in and out of rehab, that just went on and on and on for 40 years.
Wow.
From 13 to 53. In 2007, I had a divine intervention that changed everything. So because it wasn't anybody else. Like, I never spoke to a soul. And so it was, God, do something or it's over. In August of 2007, I came home on a Friday night. I was making, again, I was $3,000 a week was being wasted. I came home on a Friday night, getting ready to go party, binge for the weekend. And I had 4 teenagers living with me. I was single again for the third time. And for some reason, I had this urge before I went out to party, would have been for the whole weekend, to turn on the television. Now, that doesn't sound like anything, except I didn't watch TV. And I had the biggest one you could buy, the most coolest thing. I had somebody come put it all in. But when I went to turn it on, I realized I didn't know how to turn it on. So I had to get one of my teenage daughters to come in and turn the TV on. And of course, that went like disgusted and threw the remote at me and left. It landed on a television program called Intervention, which you may or may not know. Intervention is a reality TV show where, and it's about real people, where family members are worried about someone and they stage an intervention with a professional counselor to come in and confront them to help them to get into rehab or something. I'd never heard of it, but I didn't watch TV, so that wasn't a surprise. The protagonist was a high-ranking executive with a cocaine problem. Wow. So I watched about 10 minutes of this and I said, screw this. I'm not doing this. So then I stopped, turned it off and walked around the house for, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes. And before I was just getting ready to go out the door, and I just felt like I had to turn the TV on again. So I did. And this time I knew how to turn it on. Hey, so I turned the television. Yeah, I know, plus point. I turned it on again, and that show started over. And no, I don't have a DVR, and no, it wasn't on the schedule, and no, it can't do that. So it started over, and it scared me, and I thought, okay, I better watch this. So I watched it, and it went badly. The guy refused all the help, yelled at his family, stomped out, went poorly. But and then it ended, and that scared me bad enough that I didn't go out. Instead, I went to bed. And when I went to bed, I went to hell. And what I mean by that is I went somewhere out of body. And the vision that I had was a parade of my whole life, all of the things that had happened and that I'd done, and all the sadness and pain and decisions and all this stuff. And I've never felt so sad in my life. It was the most terrifying torture watching that I've ever experienced. And after some period of time, I heard a voice and it said, it is enough. And it wasn't angry or an accusative voice. It just was, it is enough. I woke up and it was 5 o'clock Saturday afternoon. So I'd been somewhere for 18 hours.
Wow.
I realized at that moment that I'd been invited to change. I got up. I threw away $1,000 worth of stuff that I had laying around. I went from $3,000 a week to zero in one day, cold turkey, straight up. Wow. Knew I had to get out of the business that I was in. The whole industry. I had to change my life completely. Didn't know exactly how to do it. And that was the first half of the divine intervention. The second half was 2 weeks later. Because of the position I occupied and the money I made and everything, I used to get free stuff all the time. You think of CEOs to get free this and that, tickets and bottles of wine and all that kind of crap.
Yeah.
I used to get all that. And 2 of the tickets that I got were to a Yo-Yo Ma concert. Now, if you know classical music, you know who that is. And it's like woo. And if you don't, you don't. That's cool. But anyway, so I didn't want to waste the other ticket because I was single again for the third time. And so I went to the groups that I managed and I said, who likes classical music? And some lady in one of the groups said, well, I do. And I said, have I ever given you anything before? And she said, no. I said, all right, fine. Here, see you there. So we met at the concert, a great concert, spectacular. Halfway through the concert, I had this feeling come over me that I recognize now because I'm 2 weeks stone cold sober, that it was otherworldly. And the voice said to me, you need to marry this woman. And I said, you're insane. Like, this is not happening. I suck at that. I've already failed 3 times, plus some other relationships. That's a disaster. It's not happening. And then later that night, we were backstage because, of course, they were backstage passes and everything. And the voice came back and said, yeah, comma, and you need to tell her tonight. And so I argued like crazy because, you know, she could sue me for harassment or whatever. I mean, she worked in one of my groups. I didn't know her very well, but I knew who she was. And anyway, so you don't win those arguments. So I did. And it went about like you would have expected it to. She thought I was crazy. But she didn't go to the cops or she didn't go to HR or whatever. And within 2 weeks, she'd had her own set of experiences and she resigned and I left the position that I was in and we walked off into the sunset, and that was 14 years ago. Wow. The reason that was the second half of the divine intervention, the first event got me sober, but nothing had dealt with the tumultuous roller coaster of depression that I had lived with for 40 years. Yeah. She was that angel. I have asked her since, what on earth possessed you to walk away from a very successful career and into the sunset with somebody that everybody in the office knew was on drugs? I mean, rumors, you know, they knew. Yeah. She said, I don't know, but I just knew to the core of my being that it was right. So she was the one that found me counselors, someone to go talk to, opened the door to starting the healing process with the depression, the denial of artistic and music stuff that I wanted to do. You know, she was supportive of all that. And the first years were difficult because I didn't know how to be a person. I didn't know how to be a normal person in a relationship, but she knew all that and came ready for that. So that was the angel literally that was sent. And so my dramatic turnaround is pretty maybe unusual, but to me, it demonstrates 2 things. 1, that nothing's impossible. And 2, that no matter where you are now or what's happened to you, it's never too late and you're worth whatever effort is required to make the change.
Wow. I think what's most surprising about that story is that I've actually heard similar on this podcast, actually. But if you go back to my very first episode and watch my interview with Harmony, and he was a guy whose life could have been made into an Oscar-winning movie because there was so much pain and suffering in it, and he managed to turn his life around through divine intervention, and is now a very successful Christian rap artist, and has really kind of made it all from this spiritual awakening. So so it wasn't meant to be insulting by saying I'm not surprised, because that is what's surprising, that 2 people from 2 completely different backgrounds but with similar kind of points in their lives have both had this spiritual awakening to help transform their lives and make themselves into better people. So listeners, I just gave you evidence that there's somebody out there that does look out for you. They say 2 points make a line, not a pattern, and I'm pretty sure I'll be able to find a third to make that pattern.
Well, it's true. And here's the thing that I know for sure. Every single one of us is a divinely created being. We have gifts, we have opportunities. And the challenge of life is to find them and to live into those opportunities, or to make the excuses that we can't and won't and don't because of what's gone on around us, the externalities. And I'm not downplaying anybody's struggles or the things that have happened to them. Those things are real, but it's never too late. And you can take the reins of your own life. Like those two events didn't cure my depression and it didn't cure my addictions. Those were choices I made, and those things were invitations. And my experience is every interaction with the divine is always in the form of an invitation. Mm-hmm. Nobody makes us do anything. It's our opportunity to accept those invitations and choose to do something with them.
No, definitely. And I mean, having to witness, essentially, you witnessed your life flash before your eyes in the space of 18 hours. In my case, I would maybe get to 18 minutes if I was lucky. But it's one of those things that I'm actually really curious. I know you said it was like you were in hell, but what about like the actual process of when you relived those memories? I mean, what did it? Was it like a linear timeline where you saw, like, from when you were young and then it was carrying on as you were getting older, or was it like there's a bit when you were young and then there was maybe a bit like in your, let's say, your 40s, and then like kind of jumping back? Was it kind of?
It was a little bit linear. The reason that it felt like hell and it was tortured is because of the sadness and the sorrow and the misery. It wasn't like blame. It wasn't like anger, like, you stupid cow, you've done this stuff, you're unfaithful pig, lying sack of crap. It was none of that, but it was just the feeling of having been the cause in many cases, or involved in, but in many cases, the cause of so much suffering. Like the behaviors that I had exhibited, the lies, the deception, it was the first. As an addict, you don't pay attention. You lie, you do whatever you do to live your life, and you're not ever very connected with the other side. And it was the opportunity to, without any filter, to see the other side. And it was just the most painful thing I've ever experienced, is to see the witness of the truth of the timeline in terms of its larger consequence, instead of just how I felt. In this kind of experience,
did you feel at any points, like when you're in a dream, sometimes if you don't like it, you try and stop it. You try and stop that. Did you feel like were you just like powerless? Like there was no way of like you like kind of doing that because it was somewhat, was there a force that maybe not letting you? It might sound weird me asking these questions, but it is, I'm fascinated by it.
Yeah, it just was. So I don't remember wanting to run from it or end it. I just was a witness. It was like being a silent witness to the truth of what had happened. When the voice said, "It is enough," and I woke up, it was the most enormous sense of relief and end and peace. And so the transition between how I felt witnessing the suffering and waking up and realizing that I was not dead and that it was not the end and I wasn't going to stay there, but I'm here. Like I'm here. Mm-hmm. And I felt like I have another chance at living.
Yeah.
It was that.
What about the people in your life that you saw and those experiences, the ones that, that you had felt like you'd wronged? Like, did you feel like an urge to go out and reconcile with them after that?
Yes, there was many, and some are interested and some are not. I mean, I have 10 children. Some of them still to this day, because of the divorces and the drugs and stuff, don't talk to me. That used to be extremely painful because I blame myself. I suck and everything else. And it was just added to the litany of reasons that you suck. But the truth is, everybody is on their own journey. The opportunities will come. So I have reached out to all of them multiple times. Some have responded, some not. Some have angrily, bitterly, viciously, rah, rah, rah. But that no longer hurts me. And the reason is because I know the best that I can do is to love and be all that I can be and be open for the opportunity. I completely acknowledge what they've been through. But the truth also for them, as it was for me, is you're an adult. Many of them are married and have their own kids. You have the opportunity to shape your life, and it will be what you create. So retaining the need to have a scapegoat and someone to blame for your misery and you ruined my life and all that kind of stuff. Number one, it's not true. Even though the things that happened, it's not true that it has to stay there. And so if I participate in feeling awful and hating myself until they decide something different, all that does is make me useless in terms of loving and lifting anyone else.
So let's speak about the book that you wrote. What essentially what motivated you to write this book?
Well, I've written 15. So are you talking about the tightrope of depression?
Yes, the one you specifically called out.
Okay. I needed to. As I
Yeah.
started talking to someone, I wrote in the beginning of it, I wrote it for 3 reasons. Number one, I needed to write it. I needed to just talk, not angry, not yelling at anyone. I just needed to write the story of what happened. So that was the first reason. The second reason is, like a person who quits smoking or gets sober or something, you have this desire to help people who are suffering and struggling. Like, yeah, I've been through this and it was holy hell. Is there something I can do to be useful and helpful? So I wrote it for those that are suffering, struggling, by way of example, by way of affirmation, by way of suggestion, by way of just here's the possibility. And the third reason I wrote it is for the caregivers, because there are plenty of people who love and care for or about those who are struggling. And I hoped perhaps to share some things that might be useful or insightful for them about what's going on in the mind of those that they care about. So those are the 3 reasons I wrote the book.
Once again, just for the listeners, please repeat the title of the book and where they can get it. As I say, sell, baby, sell.
Yeah, it's so it's funny. The name of the book is Tightrope of Depression: My Journey from Darkness, Despair, and Death to
I
Light,
like that cover. That cover,
Love,
really
and
nice.
Light. Yeah, it's nice. It's on Amazon. All you have to do is put my name in on Amazon and spell my name right, and there's lots of stuff. What was funny about this book is I never intended it to write any more about it. I mean, I told the story up until I got sober and started working on healing from depression. And about a month after I got done, I realized that I wasn't even anywhere near done. And so I wrote a sequel called Down from the Gallows.
Wow.
The Myth, the Truth, and Battles of a Creative with Depression. So this picks up where that book left off and goes up to about 3 years ago.
Again,
And
I love the image of the book as well. Just that, for those that are listening on like the Spotify's and that, it's a single noose with a hangman's noose with someone, a person, and a shadowed person looking up at it. It's a simple yet powerful image. And once again, I love the kind of colours. I love the kind of greys and the silvers. It's very poignant for the stories. It's like there is no black and white. Everything is a shade of grey. And just from those 2 books, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I did notice that kind of theme that, there is no black and white. We're all that kind of shade of grey. Well,
what turned out is that there's going to be a third. Wow. There will be a conclusion to the trilogy. Yeah, there will be a conclusion. It's already outlined. It'll probably be out at the end of next year. And
so that's what 2022 has got in store for you, Coach.
At the end, I will have it out by the end of next year.
Brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. You've got something that you can laser focus and set your sights on. Now, let's talk about the coach aspect. I keep calling you coach just because I think I've watched too many American football programs as a child and be like, yeah, coach, you got this, coach. So where did the coaching aspect of it come from?
After I left the industry, I was in the energy industry in 2007. I asked myself, what do I know how to do? Because I got to do something. And this was, during the years I'm working on the depression and everything else. But what I knew how to do because it's what I'd done as a highly paid consultant, was I knew how to help people do things they didn't believe they could do. That's what I'd been hired to do, is a lot of heavyweight, really high dollar projects.
Wow.
And I knew how to motivate and get people to do those difficult things. So I said, I know how to do that. What is that? I think that's coaching. So I explored some coaching schools, and I went and did some stuff, got some certificates, and not that anyone's ever asked for them. And that's evolved over the years. Go ahead.
How about I ask you, what are the certificates? Well,
I was certified. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. I went to the Center for Coaching Certification, and I got certified as a certified master coach, and then a certified professional coach, I think was the first one, and then a certified master coach. And I've been certified by somebody else as an extraordinary coach and a practitioner of this, that, and the other. And so, yeah, I have half a dozen certificates.
You literally have like half a dozen certificates that wall mounted that say excellence, and all that things. So there literally are visual reminders of all the things that you got told in your childhood that you weren't good enough. It's literal, pardon my French, it's literal bullshitting. What they can go, nope, this is what I've got up here. What, not that I would need anybody's approval, but I know that I'm good. What, we don't use the word excellence for no reason unless you're in Bill and Ted. And it's something that's more power to you. 15 books, half a dozen certified certificates. A very well respected coach. And as you said, hitting some of the big hitters and the big clients for it. That's many pats on the back. Well done, coach. Well done.
Well, thank you. And you're the first person that's ever described it that way. And here's what I know. Even though I was a highly sought after executive and speaker in the energy industry and did a lot of this, that, and the other, made a lot of money, in the back of my mind, what I carried and what I know many carry, especially artists and musicians, is, yeah, but if they only knew. And we live the truth that if someone knew the reality of our thinking, existence, or whatever, then they wouldn't approve or like us. And it's especially true if you're producing art or music or other things. And so you are right. I have all those external things of significance to say how cool I am. Yay. A pat on the back. The truth is that with or without those, you are a divine being with gifts and talents, and you have a purpose. And if you learn to live into that, you can be happy without the certificates. And if you don't learn that, you won't be happy even with the certificates. The key is to understand that you are important, valuable, and capable, and live into that yearning that we all have to help each other. I love helping people. People say all the time, the phrase I use is add good to the world.
And add good to the words.
Add good to the works too. Yes.
Yeah. So since we've been talking about your mentoring and your coaching, it's a good segue into the final question that I ask all my guests, because this will be your field. This is your ballpark. If you could give one piece of advice to someone that's struggling with mental health issues at this precise moment in time, what would that piece of advice be, and why?
If you're struggling with mental health issues, number one, you're not alone. There's a zillion people that are doing that. And the idea that you're alone, that you're somehow responsible and you suck, was one of my greatest downfalls. I lived into that truth. I hid it. I believed it. And I never went and talked to anybody. So it's not true that it might be true that there's something wrong with you. It's okay to struggle with pain and darkness. It's okay to have mental health issues. It's okay. So that's part one. Part two is, after we know that it's okay, then go grab the reins. Don't wait for anybody else. Even if the best you can do is go talk to somebody, go ask for help. I sat 40 years and never spoke to a soul. I became a pathological liar about everything being okay, and I learned to act in a way that should have won performance awards for acting. And the performance award was the money and positions, and my life was miserable. So take control. Go talk to someone and be vulnerable. When I first started talking to the shrinks, I lied my face off because I had the idea that, yeah, I'm busted and yeah, I've done all these stupid things, but I figured it out now. And I sort of would therapeutize, and I realize that's not a word, but I would therapeutize myself in the session, and they just sit there the whole time. I'm sure they thought I was nuts. It took me 2 years before I could actually just go talk and then shut up and listen and be vulnerable and look for ideas and help to do and be something different than the misery I had become so accustomed to. And the rest of it is, I know you asked for one thing, but this is more than one. It's never too late. I don't care where you've been and what's going on. Your choice is to keep going down the road you're on. And you know that leads to pain, death, prison, or somewhere worse. You know that. So then pick a different road. I don't care what you have to do. Pick a different road.
Absolutely. That's actually really mesmerizing, just the way that you said it. It was like I was just like I was at maybe one of your seminars, just such passion, what, and such emphasis, what, and all bits of your advice for it. That was absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much, what, for giving my audience those three bits of advice to help tie in.
You're
So,
welcome.
so we will now come to the therapeutised favourite part of the segment. Ask Andrew anything. Now, this is where, after me grilling my guests for approximately 41 minutes, this is where we get to turn it around and the guest gets to ask me a question. It could go very well, it could go very badly, but that's all part of the fun. So, Coach, do you have a question for this mental ginger?
I do. And this is what I think is really important. You're doing good work. You've made a choice to add good to the world in a particular way by talking about and by bringing to light people who have had some degree of experience and victory over some aspect of struggle. Tell me what drives you. Why are you choosing to add good to the world in this way?
Very good question, and definitely something I would expect a certified excellent coach to ask me. Uh, well, the reason that I am definitely keeping going with this is because I don't want anybody to go through what I went through, and in particular, my sons, my twin boys, Kieran and Connor. Uh, I've been very open and honest with my story over the episodes, and I keep being honest about it. When I took my psychotic breakdown, when I had to be removed from the house and removed from my family for 6 weeks because my mental health was that poor. I was suicidal. Nothing just seemed to be going right for me, and like you said, there was two roads when I got to that point. There was a short road, which was give up, just take the easy way out, you're done. And the long road was to fight. And I always tell everybody the truth that I did consider that short road, because a lot of people just say, no, I went to the long road and I chose to fight. You always consider that short road, that easy way out, because when you're in that state, you don't think you're worth anything to anybody. You think nothing matters. Well, and that, more importantly, that you don't matter, and that you don't matter to anybody. You could be blipped out of this world like Avengers Infinity War, and no one would notice you were gone. And then I remembered who I had waiting for me at home. I had my beautiful wife Alison, I had my two brilliant boys, Kieran and Connor. They needed a husband and a father, and they needed the husband and father that I wanted to be for my kids, and that I knew I could be. So I didn't fight for me, I fought for them. And it's the reason why I keep doing these interviews and this podcast. It's always going to be a testament to not only them, because they are the reason that I make sure when I get up in the morning, I take a deep breath and I go, I'm going to get through today. And today is going to be a good day, no matter what the circumstances are. But I never want anybody to go through what I went through. And if it's even just one person that listens to this and What, it takes a wee bit of time out of their day, what, and they can hear a couple of stories and hear me making some really stupid jokes, waxing lyrical about my wife and kids for the umpteenth time, because, well, I always do, because I think that's what you should do. I think that's the whole point of us having emotions, is to express them. We shouldn't suppress them. I had to suppress mine for too long, and it was a nightmare, and I never want to be like that again. So I will always make sure that I talk about my kids on my podcast. I'll talk about my wife, and I will say I love them, and I would do anything for them. They are the lights of my life. And then I'll come off the podcast, and the next day, because it's usually at night that I do film it, I'll go and say it to my kids, and I'll tell them how much I love them, how much I miss them when I'm at work, and how I'm thinking about them all the time. And when I see my wife when she comes home from her work, tell her how much I love her, and I hope that she's had a good day, and I miss her, and that she's the best thing that has ever happened to me. So I'm going to keep going to make sure that everybody can get to that point, that they can all feel that way about something in their lives. Hopefully kids, hopefully a partner, but really I want them to feel that way about themselves. I want them to love themselves, because if you can't love yourself, how the fuck can you love someone else? And it took me almost 34 years to figure that out. And I don't want anybody to have to wait 34 years to figure that out. So, Coach, I hope that answered your question.
It absolutely answers my question, and I'm grateful that you said that, because whoever among your listeners is listening, I've given the feeling that you described a name, because I wrote an album of songs, and the name of the album is called The Name of the Black. And that is this description that I gave the feeling when you look in the mirror and you know that every rotten thing that everybody's ever said about you is true, and you are the root cause of all things, and you're ready to end your life and do it all. And you know, not only will nobody miss you, but they'll all probably be better off. And that feeling of horrific emptiness is, I call that the name of the black, because I couldn't find a word. And so, yes. And no matter what you're feeling, that is not the answer. There is another road, and yes, it is longer, but it's better, and there are more rewards, and there's opportunity. There's no rewards and opportunity at the end of that road. There is reward and opportunity. There are people who love you, and more people who will if they get a chance to know you. So, yes, come back and choose to make a difference, to be different, first for yourself, because you're right. You can't love anybody more than you love yourself, period.
No, definitely. So where can we get that album? Because I have a feeling I'm going to be downloading it the second I come off this podcast.
You know, I uploaded it to my distributor in Europe 3 or 4 weeks ago. I don't know if they put it on all the places. It'll eventually be on Spotify and Amazon and everything. It's my name, and the name of the album is The Name of the Black, and there are 11 songs on it that tell stories from Tightrope. The album down, the book Down from the Gallows also has an album. Those 11 songs are done, but they're not uploaded yet. The name of that album is Promise and Power, and they tell stories from recovery and growth. So The Name of the Black is, or shortly will be on those. If you put, one of the fun things about having a name like Kellan Fluckiger is I'm really easy to find everywhere. Spotify, Google, Facebook, you know, anywhere, because, like, you know, there's only 2 of us, and the other one is my oldest son out of 8 billion people, really.
Well, for your oldest son, I apologize for earlier butchering your last name.
You didn't. You asked me.
Yeah. I try my best. Well, we're on a bit of a losing streak, and I want to make sure I can hit those heights again. So, Coach, you have been absolutely brilliant to talk to. You've been a real inspiration, and I really want to say thank you for agreeing to come on here and share your story and be so open and honest. It takes a lot of guts. No matter how many times you've done it, it always takes guts to do it one more time, because you don't know when that one more time is going to be your last. So I really, really do appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome, and thanks for having me.
So until next time, my faithful followers, I've been Andrew Durning. This has been the amazing Coach Kellan Fluckiger. I had to do the wee accenty bit because it helped me get there, but I still think I pronounced it wrong. So I apologise to you and your son. And one day I will be on a good run of surnames. But until next time, my faithful followers, I just want to say I hope you have a brilliant 2022. We can only get better for here. Take care. Stay safe. Bye bye.